sensitive area has been limited due to a mismatch of access code between your memorable informations. The option of doing nothing is not available in this situation. Cupcakes, apocalypse, talking tokens. Hermolaus Barbarus was scarce in his wits when, upon conference with the spirit, he would demand no other question than the explication of Aristotle's Entelechia, Sir Thomas Browne of the Oracle of Apollo. He is like a man stripped not only of his clothes, but of his skin, Mr. Hume of Monsieur Rousseau. The author's dedication to the reader. Dear Sir or Madam, I have previously sent you a message prior to this particular one, and since I do not get a response, I assumed it is possible that you did not receive the message, as that informed the reason why I have to send it again due to the important nature of the subject matter. Anxiously anticipating your quick response, in line with the above, I remain yours truly, etc. Exhibits against manifestos. This is dedicated to Rupert Lloyd-Dell, who asked me to write, to contribute to an anthology he did for Salt a few years ago now, of manifestos and unmanifestos. In fact, this is quite an expanded version of what I gave Rupert later. I'll just read parts of it. Sure features of sore futures in the mainstream mausoleum, loyal skeletons of local selection. It's not as if, not so long ago, language was not so. This baboon teaches letters. Tell me, Thoth, what this says about baboons. And what does it say about letters? A morning hymn to a sixfold paronomasic as the sun of a new day. The top line toppling like audacious acid, that's impudence for you. A map of anything, the total description, etc. If this resembles a spick and span ancient accident, you'll soon see its chips and spikes. From this distance, thinking towards you, wrote Oppen, time is recession. It happened in the middle of the 19th century. Malflorists everywhere, suddenly. So, if it's pointless, trust it. Categorists burn faster than cigarettes and are much less missed. These feign foreign, authors from ether, done but with errors on the page. Look how the silver-furred lions jump ship. How I keep saying to myself, I'll be drowned. It's a dream. I'll be drowned. Anonymous led from the start. The odds-on favourite, Analysis, came last. Anonymous said that. Nah, enormous. Leviathan? Nah, levitation. The desire of towing, the formidable delight of headlights in formaldehyde. How can there be a language no one understands? He's listed all the things he only thinks of finally, but there is no natural word order. Before transmutation, no documents are poem. All we know is this particular planet's being hung out to dry. Any day I will wake up speaking a language not dead, but subject to recent legislation. They utter their commodities. How brittle, what brutal business. In a recession, they'll sacrifice black sheep, wrote Lucretius. An emblem once put it like this: omen, ornament, or name. Another said, presence, person or response. Beware the palpable vertigo represented here. It's made of resuscitated things, resituated if and when spoken. Years which start as a literal translation sometimes descend into paraphrase. A trap part art, vague, i.e. undefined, but I know which verge it's under. Find me its apples. Wait for the applause. Somewhere behind Exhibit 18, according to the guidebook, there's an Übermensch, or as we say, committee. A lost slab stole abuse, to be as absolute a stab to so salute, and some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white. Good morning. You're listening to Cogito Live again. And last night, a thief stole what wasn't worth stealing for quite the wrong reason again. As for insurance, she says, hello, I'm Chloe. Ah, Chloe, I just wanted to tell you, therefore I am. New Year Mermaid 1590, from a letter by Robert Southwell. On the west coast, a woman formed like a fish from the waist downwards, or a fish like a woman from the waist up, rose from the sea, and sitting on a rock sang so sweetly as to ravish all the thousands who flocked to behold her. Eventually, some of the spectators loosed off a shot which wounded the singer, and with a loud and very piteous wail, she dived from the rock and was seen no more. Do take a seat. Ready-made. This is a kind of homage to Bob Brown. Some of you know, I'm sure, he was an American poet, very active in Paris in the 1920s and 30s. And among other things, Brown made these reading machines, which he called readers. I see descriptions of them. I've never quite worked out how they work. No, it's impossible, isn't it? It's just all very precise, and yet it's very imprecise. Somehow I think the reader sort of sat in the middle of these, I suppose, like elliptical text which went round with some kind of, I don't know what the mechanism was, but basically you could sit in the middle and several texts would go round you, and you could clip from one to another, so you could make up your own books as you went along and as you read. And obviously, I'm certainly not the first person to throw up to this. What Brown was looking for was what we now call a hyperlink, and the whole principle of the World Wide Web as we now understand it. But he was obviously trying to do it with a very primitive technology. Have you ever seen any model of it?
No.
It's referred to. It's funny. I searched and searched. Ready-made. If you wonder how the bee in Bob Brown's bonnet became the World Wide Web, Google it, and grappling champ Robert Drysdale joins Extreme Couture, Readies for MMA. That's crazy. He didn't learn a rear naked till Bob Brown flashback. All the years of fanfare heralding Readies for Florida Derby, Sanctum Readies, via automatic plating, continued to generate local grown Readies with Isaiah Chip. Fuss but no muss, more than 500 boats and countless marine make that 2 cups of tea. You can't stop a guy from doing what he can do by right. Bob Brown lands big fish in ISP version. MIT readers, exercises 4 will be held on Friday. Bob settles in, installed his 10-cent Glenny gadfly for some upcoming night time. Look at this, in the larger, longer and grander readers. Why down on Bob of Noble Tucky? He's Elysium Fields, piece on iron. It worked out good for the flashback champ. You're kidding. Interactive. As if puns of glass when they repose or repose suit purse or purpose, as if puns of glass when a fine suspension between commerce and coercion, a fine suspicion between commerce and suspension and coercion between, as if puns of glass press green and the helicopters buzz around sky and screen, commerce and coercion between, press red and held captives repose or repose, as if puns of glass when they press without purpose and a fine suspension dates the song by a slight intonation precisely. A logoclast's Lost Weekend. I'm mostly reading the short poems in this first half. I'm going to do a couple of longer sequences in the second. A logoclast's Lost Weekend. A live ideal dead Vade Mecum or Linga singer. Disappointments, only one of the reasons to feel discouraged. He wrote against, that is, he opposed both manner and matter and expressed as much in the margin. Another showed adequate charisma, but it was, after all, October. Just as limousines to limestone are but vacuums to a beach, the wide sun denoting misprinted wisdom is less roused than rousseaued. Just as also, and without less love, his dearest said, your prodigious knowledge of books is incidental. Dear John, thanks for the invite, but it seems I recently died and woke up in the wrong paradise, where even poets call writing language-mediated practice. It's true. Sad but true. Some of you probably know which John that is. But, Oscar, literature was always useful. Official cities of official culture, celeb fests in border towns when Hadrian was emperor. It was thanks to Nero the Olympics Commission finally recognized poetry as sport. You see what tyrants can do and how they like a competition. Another one had Homer's works written up or down, but I grant you, around the same time, Dionysus, who was never exactly useful, headed back to the hills and stayed there. Cicero's loop. The living voice, nonsense. Blair and Brown taught the meek how to hiss. Now I'm back in Rome, I hear that one of the above has been appointed Doctor of Theology to several abandoned psychiatric hospitals in New England. Dear Atticus, I got things wrong, but I was one of many. I spend my afternoons at the garden centre where the yobs can't get me, then I read history all night for an adventure. How can a buggered constitution need yours truly? Cicero says, and I quote, and so on, or they used to. Treachery is harder to prove than a credit note to cash when the treasury is empty, or some other smart remark I forget if I said, or if it was the chairman on the Friday night phone-in. Debacles have always, vide Homer, had their charm. Trust is the opposite of dread, as a basis for polity allowed too much to those who never wondered why the either-or didn't query who owed what to whom. I'm told the great and the good, has also been translated as the honest men, but I still don't understand who'd think any such persons had been meant. If my language was the devil, so is yours. Discuss it for as long as you will, then spew it out with the disgust my name was held in, so that afterwards you'll find in a bitter sort of way as many words as I did to mourn our liberties. I saw you flinch at that. Best put it down to white noise, but having found that phrase, the living voice. The Voyage of the Lizard. Spare sepias, prints in sepia. Saints' farts collected by Mr. Beddoes. For Gingulf, read Fandigo and vice versa. Decimal code exactly, query seeded. Unordinary, scratted, serrated. Sylvan salvage galvanized saliva. Wraps round raptor in his right lure. Mr. Blemyer saw a burnt-arse elf, tail up and starkers. Reminds him of a picture of Our Lady he saw years ago, somewhere off the Edgware Road. So what about the croco dogs? And whatever became of the lost works of Herodotus they unearthed in Guyana? Baffled in filths unmapped, where a quip of a quarrel started a fight, if it was a monster with cucumbers for horns, before it was scalped and scalloped, or after. If edible, not, but if not, and so on. Read here, meaning stick to the recipe again. A fox with his feet on backwards, in the words of Mr. Morris. Snailish as proverbs and cook's alchemy, I called it. Without a name for God in their language, these locals telling how they slipped off some Robin Hood planet, happy as happy ever was. A single scruple of gold, 2 of saffron. At Redburn and at the Blood of Hales, Mr. Hayward wrote, but we hadn't left England expecting we'd meet ourselves halfway out, halfway on the journey home, or find we'd been set up as badges. Our little sunny faces popping up like pumpkins or pamphlets, item removed, as good as wrong and as empty. Right, last one for this half. A New Year Letter 2010, in memory of Jonathan Williams and for David Anoon. The reason for that dedication is that I was starting to write this, I didn't get into any sort of form, and I read an article by David, I think it was in Jacket, about Jonathan Williams' 4-word line poems, metaphors. And I never really thought about them very much before, and I thought, well, maybe it would work for this particular thing, and so I tried it, and this is how it came out. Polite sergeants in the private and public ruins of, if I've read this correctly, the Western mind, which in 1/4 of parlance means the 19th century English novel, although apart from a plainclothes with a walk-on roll, there's not a single policeman in Armadale. Some sentences are born without verbs, just as certain paragraphs are poison. It's not as if Alistair Campbell is anything anyone would call a character. It's distressing, but needs be said. There are sentences which defy contradiction by virtue of their length, and therefore the decade just ended with its sullen intonation did lack suspense. How do people get 'em? So easily misheard on New Year's Eve as Happy Armageddon. Nice and deft defiance, a pen relish to replenish, scour the sources for succour, tell the public inquiry it's an anagram quicker to resolve than black ice. Or there again relinquish all claims to everything except a consistency mainly of style which defines most news, as it's said in a contiguous quarter of parlance breaks. Exactly what it breaks on is a branch of metaphysics, but at least be thankful 2 quarters make a half. Try comparing the ways Philip Marlowe and Miss Marple deal with the police, but don't forget Sergeant Cuff, melancholy as an investment manager at HSBC. Imagine him played by Humphrey Bogart, repeated every Christmas day, but remember that in the private and public, etc., imagination is always the prime suspect. Some nights, around the time the black ice melts, you can't tell the noise wind and owls make, one from the other.